months ago, a world pandemic started and forced us to adjust to a different reality. Social distancing made us be dependent on the various media platforms in order to stay in touch with the outside world. We had to use Zoom, FaceTime, and all kind of media platforms in order to communicate with our friends, family, and co-workers. This reality was extremely hard to the older generation that was born in an era of limited media platforms available. In this presentation, I will present the story of Ziv Levi, who is 57 years old, who will tell us how it was like to reinvent himself as an educator using Zoom, and how was it like growing up in the 60s and 70s using all the media platforms.
The pandemic, I entered it on March, and I lost all of my customers on one day. The parents called me up and say, listen, we have no jobs, schools are closed, please return our money back. That's what they were saying.
Yes.
And I was in the middle of a crisis. That's the way I can describe it. And step by step, I collected some students that were allowed, or they were enforced by their parents to be taught by Zoom. And I developed my Zoom skills, which means how I approach them, how I talk to them, my voice, my facial gestures, all kind of new stuff that I had to study in my old age. I'm not that young. Changes are not so easy. However, because I'm very verbal, and because I have kind of a dramatic skills, I was able to gather a lot of kids. And nowadays, I teach around 100 students in my Zoom program. I teach basically the material that I taught before, and I see prosperity in it. And I was just about to, to lose my money and to lose my job and to be abandoned on the sidewalks. But I don't know how, because I'm not a technological person. I'm quite technophobic. Mm-hmm. I manage to get me students and to do what I do best, to teach.
The 60s and the 70s were characterized by musical development, and music was a very social and cultural theme. In the 60s, music festivals became popular. Woodstock is an example of a music festival that took place in 1969 in New York. Festivals of this kind were considered as social events that shaped an entire generation in the Western world in general and in the United States in particular. In the 1970s, music became more experimental because artists had more technological freedom to create their music as a result of technological advancement. On the next slide, Ziv will talk about his experiences with music in the 60s and 70s.
I was listening to a lot of Queen, a lot of Leonard Cohen, Simon and Garfunkel. I had like all kind of music that came from the US and was a good music, Led Zeppelin, stuff like this. I adore them. And it was, we got everything right away. The way it was published or got out in the US, we got it like the day after. And I adore them.
And tell me, what was, were there any kind of music you weren't supposed to listen to at home?
No. I know that there were times in Israel that, for example, the Beatles was prohibited because of the prime minister. He said that they corrupt the youth. I don't know why, because the Beatles music is beautiful. Me myself, I had no problem. There was no censorship, whatsoever.
I see. But you know of people that were forbidden from listening to.
Yeah, in earlier times.
Mhm.
I think Israel is quite developed in terms of letting you hear all kind of influences from the West, from the East. They don't really disturb you to develop yourself in terms of music.
Mhm. And when you wanted to buy a record, when you want to purchase a record, where did you buy it and how much did it cost?
This is funny because it raises memories. First of all, I had to work for money. My mom and my dad wouldn't give me money for records.
Mhm.
I had to work for it.
Of course.
There was like a little store in the middle of Rishon LeZion, the place where I grew.
Where you grew up. Yep.
Yeah, where I grew up, and it called the Music Alley, Simtata Musica, the Music Alley.
Mhm.
And I used to go over there, sometimes with no money, just to listen to music, and then, well, I think about it.
So it was
And
more
when
like
I had money,
like a social setting as well. Young
yeah,
people went to listen to music and be together and hang out.
yeah, it was a very small store. If you picture to yourself like a large store with all kinds of people inside, no, you can stack in maybe 5 or 4, people, and that's it.
Mhm.
But
But
and we
that was
used to
enough for
play
you
us.
back then.
Excuse me.
That was good enough for you back then.
That was good enough for me. It was a very small store, very romantic, and this is a very precious memory that I have. First of all, when I was young, I'm not young. When I was very, very, very little, like around 4 or 5 years old, there was a very famous program in the radio. It was called The Cat in Boots. Cat in Boots.
Mhm.
And they were giving their songs and stories and all kind of stuff, very educational.
Mhm.
And I used to wait every day till 4 o'clock when they had like maybe 1 hour show, and it was my precious hour in the day. So I loved radio because when I was young, it was let's say a tool of socialization, because I was socialized by it. It was very important to my development. Beautiful stories, beautiful songs, a lot of interpersonal relationship between the characters in the story. And this is something that affects you. I believe that things that are within me now are have base and roots in this special program when I was very young. It affected me a lot.
In 1927, the television was invented and changed the world. Essential information has become accessible and transmitted all over the world. Television has helped spread culture, news, and information, as it considered a revolutionary media platform. In 1975, color television became available. In this slide, Ziv will tell us about his experiences with television as a teenager and the first time he watched color television.
First of all, when I was like around 10 years old, we had no TV. No TV, just radio. And we got our first TV, and then after something like 3 or 4 years, there was a color TV. And only the rich people could afford a color TV. And I was remembering myself waiting and waiting and waiting for a color TV. And when my father got one, it was one of the happiest days of my life. Of course, after 2 or 3 days, you get used to it and you don't remember that once TV was black and white. but it was a very, very like crucial moment for me. Not only the TV, but you know, something like a social status that we, like others, have color TV. It was very important. It meant a lot. And then, you know, programs were developing, and I remember basically a lot of programs from the US, which I used to watch.
Can you give me some examples?
Yes, but I will have to remember. There was Roger Moore, Roger Moore, he was a hero, like the program called The Angel. The Angel. There was a crippled man on a wheelchair, like a detective, Aaron Side. They were all given names. Colombo, who was an American Italian detective. A lot of, and then, you know, like Dallas with JR. And this is something that I remember very vigorously, because in the program, someone shot JR, and no one knows who shot him. And it was like a big deal in our country. People would ask themselves, who shot JR? And they were guessing and trying to bring all kind of hypotheses. Eventually, we got the answer, but it was something. You got into a store, you got into a grocery, people would ask, who shot JR? It was like a mystery.
So you think it's something that we're connecting people together, kind of create maybe a conversation topic around the neighborhood or something. Everybody had their TV at home, and then you go and you talk about it with your friends, with your neighbors.
I will tell you something which is very complicated. Today, when I'm not young and I'm more educated and I'm more like matured, I don't like TV, which means I can consume sports because I love it. I would not be able to watch programs of detectives and stuff like this as I did in the past. I think TV is kind of corrupting our souls. I don't like most of the things that they give over there. I don't like realities. I think it's time consumer, and it prevents you from doing other stuff, which is living, which is be able to fulfill yourself. I'm trying not to be a lot near the television. I told you before, I'm a sports addict, and this is my only fault. However, I know that people, even nowadays, you get into a place, people talk about, you know, like reality shows and what happened yesterday in one of the chapters. So it brings people together. I have to say that it is very low in terms of level or, you know, educational stuff.
Movies served as a way of globalization and conveyed cultural and social information throughout the world. For example, films from the United States, from Hollywood, have become popular in small countries like Israel and all over Europe, and have passed on American culture through films. In this slide, Ziv will tell how movies inspired him to move to New York.
First of all, I belong to the generation that adores Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta in Grease, the movie Grease.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched it like 10 times in the theater, over and over and over again. And we used to dance like him, and we used to get dressed like him, and the girls were dressed like Olivia Newton-John. And it was, you know, sweet days and very innocent. Now I look backwards and I laugh because it looks funny, all this dancing, moving and stuff like this. And it's not sophisticated. It's not saturated with wisdom. It's easy. It's simple. But When I was 16, I believe that that was enough. But I have like romantic memories from this era.
I see. I watched Grease as well in my young age, and I think it's a classic and a great movie. Just a fun movie to watch.
Okay.
Um, so, can you tell me, in terms of globalization, how do you feel like the movies, as you said, Grease, or movies that came from the USA or from other countries to Israel, to a small country, how do you feel like it affects globalization in terms of culture and your social life?
Okay. Wow. This is quite
This is a big question.
a big question. Yes, I have to reflect and I have to think again. Well, first of all, a great admiration for United States because everything happens in New York. So when you see the movie Taxi Driver with Judy Foster, and when you see even I forgot the name. Many movies were taking place in New York. So I always had in mind I have to go to New York. And then right after I finished the army service, something like, maybe like 2 or 3 months, I went to New York and I started working over there. And I was registered as a student, a psychology student in Queens College.
Mhm.
And every Saturday, I was living in Queens, but every Saturday and Friday, when I went to New York, being in Central Park, which is something that I saw only in the movies, it meant a lot to me. Seeing the building where John Lennon was living in, looking at the bar when Woody Allen plays music every Thursday night. This is classical. This is something that, for example, I knew that a great singer by the name of Billy Joel lives in New York. So I would walk in New York and I say, wow, maybe I'll meet Billy Joel over here. He was one of the heroes of my childhood. So first of all,
Something that you only, yeah.
First of all, it gave me a lot of, I wanted to go to New York. It was very important to me. So I spent some years over there.
And it was important for you because of the time you spent watching movies about New York, watching TV shows about New York, and this was something that really influenced you. Just watching it through the different media platforms, you just knew you have to go there.
Yes, yes, and it also like how would I say it? It also set my mind in terms of what kind of person would I like to be.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the fact that I'm a man, when you see Clint Eastwood in westerns and in other stuff, you adore him and you feel a lot of great feeling towards him, and it made me more of a global person. I believe in social rights. I believe in all the stuff that Hollywood made me believe in, because usually when you see films from Hollywood, it concerns people and minorities and blacks and whites and all kind of things that were in the American society, and I was influenced by it as well. And we also have minorities in Israel, so you take the model you saw over there and you put it here, and then you become I would say a humanistic person.
Mm-hmm.